So the Ascension. I've seen lots of paintings. If you looked at our website for the preview of what I used as an image, and I asked AI to generate it for us. I said, "Hey, artificial intelligence, what are you going to generate for me the image of the Ascension?" And it was a very traditional, cloudy kind of moment where there's a person hanging, floating in the cloud, and there's a group of people looking up at the person in the cloud, and he's dressed in what we imagine to be first century garb. That kind of image is the image we traditionally have, and there's something perhaps miraculous about it, and we treat it as such an important miracle. Jesus being lifted up, Jesus headed off to heaven, whatever it may be. But I think that there's something more to it. It implies something more than just let's admire Jesus floating on a cloud. I think it calls us to something deeper. It calls us to see something about ourselves. As I was reflecting on what I thought this was about, I had this image that came to me of me in the ninth grade. So ancient image. They had just invented the ninth grade, that kind of thing. And so in the ninth grade, we had field day. And somehow or other, I ran just fast enough to be on the relay team with three really fast guys. So I guess they were hoping the three really fast guys would make up for the semi-slow guy that was on the team. Now, part of our job was we carried this little, I almost picked up some kind of baton before I came, but then I priced them and said, those batons, to be just a little piece of metal you pass between people, are kind of expensive, so I didn't need that. Just imagine little tube, probably aluminum, very light, that you pass off to the next runner, and they can't keep running until they get it. So part of the art of passing the baton is making sure that you get the baton before you start running, because if you drop the baton, you've got to go back and get it. So you pick up the baton and you pass it along to the next person, who then carries the baton to the next person, who then carries the baton across the finish line. And it's a passing on of something worth passing on. This symbol, probably symbolic of the message that was being carried by messengers long ago, when it was a message tube and you were carrying it from one town to the next. So you ran as far as you could run, gave it to another runner who ran as far as they could run, passed it off to the next runner, and eventually it got where it was going. But that idea of passing the baton is really what I think Ascension is about. It is about passing the baton. Let me read you the story. There are several versions of it. In Luke, sort of gives an image and then passes it forward to Acts, because Acts is also, Luke, Acts are both written by the same person, we believe anyway. So the ascension of Jesus for us begins in the book of Acts in verse 6. And I want you to listen carefully, if you would. Listen for what God might be speaking to you today, and then we're going to talk a little bit about passing batons. So when they had come together, the disciples, they asked him, "Lord, is this the time when you will restore the kingdom of Israel?" He replied, "It is not for you to know the times or the period that the Father has set by his own authority. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." When he had said this, as they were watching, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. While he was going, they were gazing up toward heaven. Suddenly, two men in white robes stood by them. They said, "People of Galilee, why do you stand looking up toward heaven? This Jesus who has been taken up for you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven." Then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey away. This is the reading for this morning. Thanks be to God. Well, this ascension that happened, it was a Sabbath day journey away from Jerusalem, which means it was short. On the Sabbath, you're not supposed to go very far. You're supposed to go a very short distance, at least according to, and these are all Jewish followers, so they would have followed Jewish law. So they didn't want to go too far, so they went just a short distance, said farewell to Jesus, and then returned to Jerusalem. Now, what's very interesting about this is not the question they ask and Jesus saying you don't know the time. Because I don't know how many times in my life I've heard people predict Jesus is coming back any minute. And it's going to happen in the year 2000. You know, Y2K, that's the year. Nope. People have been predicting this coming again in the clouds thing for the last 2,000 years, ever since Jesus took off in the clouds. We're ready. We think we're ready. We're sure of it. When we hit 1,000, sure. 1,500, sure. Reformation, absolutely sure at that point when we broke open everything. Splits in the church, coming togethers in the church, all those things. We always thought they were a sign. And they've never been a sign because not a single one of us has any idea. But some people actually try to make a living off predicting when it's going to happen. Now, of course, if you predict it's next week, you can make a lot of money off of that for about a week, and then when it doesn't happen, you're done. You're done. So a lot of people who want to predict it, I'm sure, are very sincere, and some of them are charlatans, just trying to make some cash. If you do it this way, he's coming back. But the truth is, Jesus is not so much focused on what it looks like when he comes back. Jesus has, in heading off, handed the baton to the disciples. And the fortunate thing for us is they took it seriously. Because we wouldn't be here today if they had not taken the serious message of, hey, share this message that you've gotten with everybody else. But as if to remind the disciples, as they stood looking up, two messengers. And we have this sense of messengers from God. Luke just describes them as men in white robes. So we've got some folks in white robes that show up and say, why are you looking at heaven? And I think this is the crucial question for the church today. For a long time, the church sold itself as a get out of hell free card. Sign up with church, and you bought your way into heaven, brothers and sisters. You have brought your way in. So this was, that nice card we're going to hand out to people. You've come here, you've hung out with us. Now you believe in Jesus, you can slide yourself into that next life of heaven. But I think that those messengers, those angels, if you will, ask the same question we ought to be asking ourselves. Why are we so focused on something that comes next instead of what's right in front of us right now? Especially when Jesus, in all of his teaching, focused on how the kingdom was near to us, was within us, was close at hand. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. This idea that the kingdom is somewhere yet to come, where everything is pearly gates and golden streets, is not what Jesus taught. It's what we like to sell. It's like, it's bad here, but don't worry. You'll slide into a beautiful place that will be free of pain and challenge somewhere down the road. Jesus says, what are you going to do about now? What are you going to do about here? It's not just the message. Because if you read on in the book of Acts, we find out over and over again that what the disciples do is make sure people are fed and clothed, and they share everything in common, and they reach out to one another. They do share the message of Jesus' love, but it's really in physical ways as well as, in the words themselves. The disciples were known for loving. In fact, one of the descriptions of those early disciples were, see how they love one another. See how they love. See what a difference it's made in their lives and how their love overflows, not to just people who are inside the church, but outside, everywhere. They're remembered for that. I thought that the video had this wonderful, wonderful question. If we asked the mayor of Alexandria what he thought of the churches, what would he have to say? What would he have to say? Would he say, those churches really care? Would he be even able to name St. James as one of those churches? Now, we think we care. We do some things. We have the West End Food Pantry right here. We do other kinds of things in the community in various kinds of ways. But are we really caring for our community? Or have we become like some churches, very insular, very inward focused, very much, hey, we've got to do what we can do. These messages are for us. Sometimes we like to believe that we are chosen and that we're chosen for privilege rather than for purpose. We are called to love a world that sometimes looks unlovable. We are called to love people that sometimes don't look so lovable to us either. Some people that sometimes for us just bring our blood to a boil. You see, God doesn't differentiate that way, and we can't afford to either. Who hung out with Jesus? Everybody wanted to hang out with Jesus, but Jesus often hung out with those that nobody else would hang out with. I mean, what would be your first thought if you heard, I was hanging out down wherever prostitutes hang out? You know what James is doing? He's been down hanging out with prostitutes. What is going on with him? Something must be wrong. We better check his morality because he's hanging out with prostitutes. Jesus did it. Now, of course, we know people that perhaps hang out with prostitutes for other purposes than to try to let them know that they're cared for and loved for the purpose of the people that they already are. But that was what Jesus did. He modeled for us what church is supposed to be, and then he passed the baton to us. In the Gospel of John, he said, you've seen me do great things. You'll do even greater things. When you think of the church today, especially in the massive decline, the free fall decline that is the truth about the church after the pandemic. We were already sort of falling, but the pandemic pushed us over a little cliff, and the numbers they tell us are very frightening. I don't know that they're frightening. I don't know that they're frightening. Because in the end, what is most important is the message. It's the message. And if there's only, let's say with all of our online folks, 150, 200 folks out there doing something about it, it can still make a difference. Oftentimes we feel overwhelmed by what we see going on in the world. Can we be honest with each other? We don't think we make any difference at all. But every time we engage, we have picked up the baton of Jesus and shared the joy of what we received. Every time we engage with another human being, it is about relationships. I love the quote at the beginning of that. You know, in America, church became an enterprise. Buy this cool book. Follow this cool guy who tells everyone how to manage their money better. Follow this amazing teacher and her writings. Follow this person. We package it in neat packages. And for $19.95, you too can have this cool book, read about it, and get it. We have become a people who package. Well, who cares about the package if we're not loving? It doesn't matter if we have really cool Bibles? You know, this one is actually the church's Bible, because inadvertently, before we began worship, I left my Bible somewhere in the building that I don't have. Doesn't matter. This one was donated in memory of Mary Louise Campbell. Many of you don't know who she was. She was here when I first came to St. James, 1992. She was the chairperson of our church council, a long-time United Methodist, but she loved. She loved. I still bear the marks of her love. I still bear the marks. In fact, what was such a joy to me when I said, I can't find my Bible. What do I got? Oh, I've got a Bible over here that belongs to the church. Let me go see let me pull it up. And the first thing that happened when I opened it up, given to the glory of God and in loving memory of Mary Louise Campbell. And I just, for a moment, was touched by the presence of a saint who had kind of spoken love into my life. Do you realize when you speak love into somebody else's life, and I mean speak it not only with your words but with your actions, that it can change that person? You know, not that your job is to try to change people into something that you find acceptable, but when you just love people right where they are, no matter what's going on in their lives, no matter how crazy life is for them, chaotic, and I sit with people whose lives are chaotic almost all the time. There are moments when the chaos seems to overwhelm them. And I just say, you know what, we'll work this out. This is just a small thing. We can make this. I know it seems big. And I hear you saying that it's big. But let's just sit here together and see if we can't find a way to the other side. And it'll be okay. I can't tell you how many people tune into our videos online, my videos every week, just because. They don't care what I say after the first few minutes. The first few minutes of my video is, you are infinitely precious. Remember, you are infinitely precious and unconditionally loved for the gift you already are. I have had people tell me, James, I don't even hear what you say after that because it doesn't matter. I needed to know and be reminded because that's the only time I hear it, which makes me sad. How infinitely precious and unconditionally loved I am. And I need to be reminded of that. It helps me feel alive. It helps me be reminded that I'm valued and that my life matters. You see, you and I can help others experience that their lives really do matter. And we do it simply by sharing our love when we meet them. Being patient, being present. You know that thing we practice at the beginning of every worship experience when I make you sit there and breathe wherever you are? And if you're online, maybe you fast forward through that. Or maybe that's your moment to break and go in another room and get a snack and come back for the rest. But the truth is, if we just practiced when we start to feel ourselves get distracted, we just practiced being there. Oh, I'm finding my mind's wandering. Here I am. My mind's wandering. Here I am. Because people can tell when you're really listening to them and when you're brushing them off. People can tell. I can tell. There are all sorts of people I encounter who just kind of, perfunctorily say the right things to me until I leave. What will it take to get James wandering away? I don't know. We'll just say a couple of the right things and he'll go somewhere. But what would it be like if you and I practiced really being present where we were? It's one of the greatest signs of love I think there is. If you can really listen to what another person has to say and really be there with them without offering solutions. Now, this is another dangerous thing. I'm always ready with a quick solution. Years ago, Linda taught me an important lesson about being a husband. But it's not just about being a husband. It is about being a person in relationship with another person. And that was, sometimes she came home from work and she told me about all the crazy things that were happening there, whatever chaos was going on there. And I went into fix-it mode. Well, let me just tell Linda how she can solve that problem. because I have a solution. Immediately, I have a solution. And Linda taught me early on in our marriage. It was a very important lesson. Most men never, ever learn this. Be good if we did. She didn't want me to fix it. She could fix it. Oh my gosh. I know Linda now. We've been married over 32 years now. I know her. She can fix anything. The only thing she can't fix are sometimes things that require, spatial relations. And even those she fixes without me all the time. But the truth is, she didn't want me to fix. She wanted me to hear her. She wanted another person who cared what she had to say just to listen to what had happened and then let it go. Not fix it, not tell her how to fix it, not mansplain the fixing of it, but let her know that someone cared about what she said. That's part of the baton Jesus passed along to us. How many times do we see over and over again, he stopped at the side of the road to listen to somebody? To listen to somebody. That the disciples said, "Oh, shut up, be quiet. Jesus doesn't have time for you." And Jesus said, "Wait a second. Who was that just called me? I got to talk to him." And Jesus listened and talked back. Over and over again, he does it when he's on his way somewhere. He stops. When he's just meandering through town, he stops. He stops and talks to people that nobody else talks to. He talked to women he wasn't even related to. That is a first century no-no. That is a first century Jewish no-no. But he did it anyway. He did it anyway. Now, you and I need to do it anyway. It doesn't matter what somebody tells us we're supposed to do, and that includes me. What matters is that you love from the bottom of your heart in the same way God already loves you. And you love from the bottom of your heart in the way that the person that you encounter needs to be loved. Listening, speaking words of comfort, not judging. Jesus is not a finger pointer. The only people he ever, and he didn't even really point fingers then, he called out the religious folks. We want to give Jesus the reputation of pointing out all these moral failures. He doesn't spend a lot of time on that. Do you know what he spends a lot of time on? Calling out religious people who are making it harder for anybody else to experience love. Does it sound like any church you know in today's world? I think so. Make it really hard for people to hear that they're loved. Instead, they've got a list of things they want to judge you for. You are loved. If you hear nothing else today, you are loved. And because you are loved, I want to encourage you to receive the baton of love that Jesus passed on to you. And not just hoard it for yourself. Put it in your jacket or your pocket. But let it out. The early church kind of took the baton and ran with it. And over time, we maybe forgot that our whole purpose was not to hold everybody else. We're not the moral police of the world. That's not our gig. We think it is sometimes. It makes us feel better about ourselves because at least I'm not like that guy out there, that gal down the street. But it's not our gig. Judgment is above our pay grade, way above it. Way above it. Judgment's above that. And it belongs to God. And God sees you with eyes of love. So our whole job, if we're going to take up the baton of Jesus, our whole job is to love. Is to love. That's the baton Jesus passed to the church. Well,